Today, I have something that I feel is fairly serious that I want to talk about, and that's actually why I even decided to dress up today, just to show you how serious I am about this topic. Now, we've all seen the headlines that a market crash is on the horizon, how to prepare for a market crash, or it's coming, what you need to do now. And when you scroll through YouTube or when I go through my stocks page, that's really all I see is just channels talking about this upcoming crash that really this conversation has been going on since at least March of last year, where everybody is saying that a crash is coming within the next few days to a month. But here's the thing. I've been hearing about a huge crash coming since around 2016 when I first got into finance, around the time that Brexit was a huge topic of discussion. One second. Alright, sorry about that. A little too uncomfortable wearing that shirt, and I'm just more comfortable wearing t-shirts like this, but I am still very serious about this topic. Now, one thing I wanted to show going back to the 2016 here for the point of reference, when I was hearing everybody talking about getting out of investments, maybe we should hold off for a few years because the market is going to crash, is if you look at the performance of the S&P 500 from July of 2016 to today, it has almost doubled in price and has gone up significantly since then. Meaning, if you did not buy back in 2016 because you were afraid of a crash, you probably missed out on significant gains. And I hope in the past 5 years, you've actually decided to get back into the market and hopefully we're able to reap some of those benefits of the market going up. Now, I personally believe that bad news does tend to sell better than good news, and I think that's why anytime the market ticks down a little bit or heads in the wrong direction, a lot of people are thrown into a frenzy and panic sell out of their investments. Now, to make this quick and to the point, I personally am not worried about a major stock market crash or a housing market crash. However, I am concerned about there being a crash in the crypto market, which could be the cause of a recession. But let me explain. I'm sure you've heard the phrase that Warren Buffett is famous for, where he says something along the lines of be fearful when others are greedy and be greedy when others are fearful, or something along those lines. I heard a phrase in a book the other day that I was reading that I liked. I think the book is called 7 Years to 7 Figures or something along those lines. And one of the people in the book says that he likes investments that don't have a lot of friends and stays away from the more popular investments. And that's actually a very similar investment philosophy to what I follow. And the way I judge this, and I'm actually using a real life example here, as you know, or as I made a video about not too long ago, I'm in the process of starting a real estate company. Now, one of the biggest things that I hear whenever I tell people I'm starting a real estate business or I left my job in finance to get into real estate is you hear people say, why now? The housing market is completely overvalued. Homes are going to crash soon and everything's going to be super cheap. Why would you want people to invest in them now? Or things like there's just too much competition. Nobody's going to be able to actually buy a house with you right now. And honestly, that's the answer I'm looking for, because that to me indicates that a lot of people are hesitant with the housing market. I think a lot of people have '08 fresh on their minds where the housing market actually did take a hit. And when people now hear a crash, especially younger generations like myself, we just immediately assume that housing is going to go with it because that's what happened in '08, which is the recession we're most familiar with. Now, in the case for housing, in theory, prices of housing is not going to pull back similarly to what you'll see for equity investments like stocks. I know '08, but bear with me here. Generally, what we do see what happens with housing, though, is the competition goes down, meaning that people aren't overpaying for prices as much. Or if they're the only buyer, that might give them the opportunity to buy the house below market value. Now, yes, that does have a short-term impact on that local area's property values. We can get really deep in the weeds on that discussion. But just to keep it simple and high level here, generally housing prices do not go up and down like a stock does or cryptocurrency. And when it comes to stocks, when a lot of people say that they're going to start selling out of their stocks to lock in gains while also locking in like a 15 to 22% capital gains tax, then we should expect to see a pullback in the stock market prices, where me as the investor is going to look at that as the opportunity to get in, because remember, this investment is starting to lose its friends as people sell out of it, meaning that I'm now attracted to this because there's not as many friends tied to this investment. And I think that this will also emphasize the importance of having cash in your portfolio, but that's a whole nother discussion. But anyway, back to cryptocurrencies. With stocks, it's pretty easy to tell the difference between when a company's share price is just falling back versus a company that is headed in the wrong direction and might have to file for bankruptcy. Usually we're able to identify these situations by listening to earnings reports, and if there's a few quarters, maybe even like a year and a half of bad earnings reports where profits, revenues, and all that fun stuff is going down, then sure, I might look at that as the time where, hey, maybe I need to say goodbye to this investment and look for other opportunities opportunities. But with crypto, and as we saw with Bitcoin last week, it doesn't take much to have a heavy swing in this kind of investment. And this can happen really without warning. Now, I'm not saying this doesn't ever happen with stocks, but it does not happen anywhere near as often with stocks as it does with cryptocurrencies. And with the majority of these coins out there having little to no intrinsic value, it really does not take much other than Elon Musk sending a tweet, China announcing that they're going to ban Bitcoin mining, or any kind of bad publicity for these coins or currencies to trend in a very bad direction, making a lot of people lose a ton of money. And this ultimately eliminates your opportunity as an investor to get out and still be able to take away some profits from these positions, because if you go to sleep one night, with them also being a 24-hour market, you might wake up the next morning with a negative balance or having lost a large sum of money. All right, reason number two, and admittedly this kind of feeds off number one, but this also has to do with the fact that there really isn't a lot of certainty looking forward with this investment. Stock market has been around for a very long time. Housing market's been around even longer. So those are both very well established investments. And we could say the same thing about the bond market, but who really cares about the bond market anyway? And this actually falls in line with why I don't really invest in marijuana stocks. Because when you invest in either, I guess now an investment itself or an industry that has a lot of changing rules, regulations, and doesn't really have a definitive guideline for how governments will approach this company, industry, or investment, that leaves a lot up to fate and hope that this will provide a significant return. And a lot of people have had a significant return with cryptocurrencies. But if anybody bought in last week, you're probably feeling the pain right now. And as I mentioned earlier, the Bitcoin drop last week was partially due to China banning the mining of Bitcoin, or them saying something about them not accepting it as a currency. We also had last week Biden talking about companies needing to report cryptocurrency transfers over $10,000, and this whole tax situation with selling out of cryptocurrencies. I'll be honest, I've read zero into that because I don't really have investments in a cryptocurrency, so it's not something that affects me. But if we see other countries start to have these really strict regulations or just flat out make it illegal, like what we've seen with countries like China, Russia, Denmark, India, or Morocco, then these cryptocurrencies can lose their dollar value very quickly, again, meaning a lot of people can lose a ton of money. And reason number three here of why I think cryptocurrency might be the root cause of the next crash is this investment simply has too many friends. I saw a meme the other day from Wall Street Bets that I'll just put it up here so you guys could take a look at it. But this meme, while yes, it's just a meme and it's supposed to be a funny joke, really does feel all too familiar, especially if you've seen the movie The Big Short. And when something is too good to be true, haven't you heard before that maybe it is actually too good to be true? Now, one of the biggest problems that I've been seeing with cryptocurrencies recently is I now apparently have a ton of friends on Facebook who overnight became financial advisors specializing in the crypto world. And these are people with no financial education or background. Now, I'm not saying you have to go to Harvard or Wharton to be an expert in finance. I didn't do that. But I have spent the better part of almost the last 10 years spending a lot of time learning about these kinds of investments. But then I see somebody who just kind of picked this up the other day because they saw a headline of people making $1 million. Now all of a sudden they're telling people about, capital gains tax and how to trade these in different kinds of accounts and where they belong and all of that stuff. It to me just does not seem like sound advice and not really anything I would follow. And I'll admit, when I do tend to follow these people with these huge ideas of how to make $1 million through these kinds of investments is when I tend to lose the most amount of money. On top of that, I've had friends do some pretty ridiculous moves recently, or I've heard of crazy stories when it comes to cryptos. I've heard of people deciding to not pay back their student loan or car loan or even their mortgage sometimes so they can use that money to then invest in crypto because obviously this is going to return 1,000% in the next 3 days and they'll be able to cover it all in a matter of time. I even heard of somebody the other day that is deciding to not purchase a house because they're going to invest in crypto anyway, because by the time they decide to actually go ahead and buy a house, this crypto will have returned them over $1 million and they can buy any house they want. Now, As I've said many times on my channel, this is not advice, so nothing I say here should be taken of it as advice, especially this. This is all my opinion. But that is really bad financial decisions, because putting money that you cannot lose into an investment that's incredibly volatile, whether that's a stock or cryptocurrency, is not a good decision. And if you do put your money, all of your money, into something that, again, lacks an intrinsic value, like what we're able to do with companies, and is still facing a lot of government regulations or can be influenced by one person sending out a tweet and causing 30% drops, well, then you might be feeling a lot of pain with this when it comes time for you to need to access that money. With all that said, there really are a ton more reasons why I am just simply not really a fan of cryptocurrency. Now, if you've made money with this, let me say, great, good for you. And if you understand what these coins do, I've heard of apparently Theta actually does provide some kind of value to the consumer, then that's great. You're obviously taking the time to be educated on this. But if your investment strategy of cryptocurrency hasn't really come from anything other than like Elon Musk tweeting, Wall Street bets, or just what your barber or your, random friend on Facebook was saying, I think it might be a good decision to rethink your strategy. So to sum all of that up here, I don't believe that we'll have a huge stock market crash or a housing crash anytime soon. I mean, we might within the next year. Nobody knows that. Nobody can tell the future. But I will say, if there is a crash, I do believe that cause is going to come from cryptocurrencies. And that does mean things like stocks and housing could be affected by that crash, but they're not going to be the leading reason why everything else takes a little bit of a hit. And that's just my opinion. I'd love to have this discussion with all of you in the comments, or maybe make a follow-up video. I'd even consider going live if it's something that maybe any of you wanted to discuss with me, because I enjoy having these discussions and I enjoy learning from people who actually have taken the time to really understand cryptos. What are the benefits? And I mean cryptos, not blockchain. I think blockchain is absolutely amazing, but cryptos do scare me a little bit. Anyway, I'll leave you with just my investing tips, not advice here. As I said a few times during this video, I like to search for investments that don't have many friends, and I think that's a strategy more people need to look into. If you're buying into hype, you're going to face volatility, and if you have strong investment goals or purposes, you'll understand that volatility is your enemy a lot. I think that these kind of situations absolutely stress the importance of having a diversified portfolio. And by that, I don't mean just owning shares of Apple, Walmart, Microsoft, and Starbucks. I mean being diversified across asset classes. There's nothing wrong with having, a portion of your portfolio in stocks, portion of your portfolio in bonds, maybe some CDs, real estate, cash, or having a small portion of it in cryptocurrencies. Because obviously there has been money, or there could be money to be made. So if you have a small portion invested in cryptos, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. My problem comes with people spending all of their money going into these cryptos, again, without understanding these as an investment. Which leads me to my last tip here, is never invest more than you can afford to lose. Also, pay off debts before you buy stocks and all that fun stuff. You really should handle debts before you try to make money in equity, because, a credit card's interest rate is generally going to be higher than the rate of return of what you'll see for a stock. But again, never invest more than you're willing to lose. You shouldn't go to a casino with your next 3 months of student loan payment to gamble it all so that you can think you'll be able to afford 6 months of student loans from that. And the same thing applies with investing. You shouldn't be using this money if you can't afford to lose it, because you do have the ability to lose it. That's one of the main disclosures on any investment platform, is investing does have the, how is it worded? Investing does include the risk of losing your principal investment, meaning you can lose everything that you've invested in it to $0. So bear that in mind as you make these investments. Again, if you want a cryptocurrency in your portfolio, by all means, I don't think there's anything wrong with having a small portion of it. But I will say, make sure, as always, do your own research. Your random friend that you haven't spoken to in 10 years is not a financial advisor of cryptocurrencies on Facebook. So don't listen to everything everybody has to hear. And when in doubt, always make sure you have some kind of limit order. I don't know if you can do this with cryptos. I think you can. set up in your portfolio, so that way you can go to sleep at night knowing if Dogecoin goes back to 4 cents, then at least maybe you'll have a limited order in at like 28 cents, so you don't lose everything that you have. I think that's the most important thing here, because with this, again, there's no real backing to this money right now, and if it all just gets wiped off because Elon Musk tweets or if the government bans these cryptocurrencies, then unfortunately you're going to lose everything with no warning sign. So that's my video here. I think it was a little bit of a rant today, but again, please leave some comments below for any kind of maybe your thoughts on this. If you want me to do like a live video and discussing all of this with you, or if you want me to make a follow-up, I'm always happy to do that. So just let me know what I could do to help. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up here. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to watch this. Oh, as always, I forgot to say, like this video, it's a 5-cent donation for charity. Subscribe, it's a 10-cent donation for charity. Yeah, now I'm done. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to watch this. You could be anywhere in the world, but you're right here with me, and I really appreciate that. But I'll let you go ahead, enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you tomorrow for Watch This Wednesday.